And quite frankly, you're going to hear a lot of Philadelphia fans probably complaining last night about the play that was called between Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley that ended up losing the game for the Philadelphia Eagles. They run the play 1,000 times in practice. They've been practicing this play for this particular moment, since OTAs. So all the player has to do is make the catch, and the game is over, and it goes right off Saquon Barkley's hands, much like it went off Malik Neighbors' hands. These plays are practiced over and over and over and over, and this is an easy first down for the Eagles. They're going to, basically bleed out the clock, and they're going to win the game. Saquon,
why even throw the ball?
You know why? Because you're going to win. This is what you do when you want to win football games, and this is how coaches do it nowadays. Other teams may have run it back in the day when I played. They'd run it, and they'd run down the clock. They'd kick a field goal, whatever. But, this is a situation where you got one play, you got your two best players, you make the play, game is over. That's it. Simple. And the players do not do what they're supposed to do. It was a perfect throw by Jalen Hurts, and Saquon just took his eyes off the ball and didn't make the play. So it's the same thing with Malik Neighbors. Same thing. I mean, and we can go back and forth. Shouldn't you have kicked this? Shouldn't you have kicked? You know what? I call that an aggressive play call to win the game. That's what that was. And I have no problem with that because they knew they had the field goal in their back pocket. So why not do this? And I know that Troy and Joe, there's always two sides to every discussion point when it comes to a situation like this in the NFL. My thing is the Eagles said, you know what? We're going to go for it. We got our best players, and we're going to let them do what they do every single day in practice. But for some reason, a guy can't catch a ball when the game's on the line. I don't know what to tell you. That's maybe one of the reasons why the Giants didn't want him here. I don't know. But again, to go back to your initial sentiment, yeah, I'm tired of all that stuff too. But we got to see what it looks like after 17 games.
Even if he has a great season for the Eagles, that doesn't mean that Saquon Barkley should have stayed with the Giants. There's just nothing about what Saquon Barkley brought to that team that it would have been smart to bring him back with the money that they were going to pay him. I mean, they're not. If Saquon Barkley were on this Giants team, do you really think they'd be that much better than they were in the first 2 weeks? He'd been here forever, and they stunk every year that he's been here.
I don't think so. I think that their defense has got big problems. That's what I think. I think they tried to fix their defense in the offseason to a certain extent with their front seven, but I do think that their defense has got problems. Now, it's a new defensive coordinator. He's figuring out his players. The players are figuring out his scheme. This defensive coordinator has a track record of being successful at Tennessee under Mike Vrabel. He kind of comes from that Dean Pease kind of Vrabel, Belichick, bend don't break kind of defense. Force the offense to make plays like Philadelphia did not make last night when the game was on the line. But on the flip side of all of this. For me, anyway, watching last night, I was happy to see Kirk Cousins do what he did because much like Aaron Rodgers coming off of an Achilles injury, they didn't play great in the first game that they had, and they came back and you saw a guy at the end of the game come through in a big way. I mean, he threw some
on
great
a national
passes.
TV game, which is something that everybody has criticized him for since the second he's been in the league. You can't win primetime games, and this was a big one for him.
Oh, I'm happy for him because he threw a number of great passes late in this game, and especially on that last drive. He was like bing, 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 like he was right on it, and there was no pass rush. And again, probably no pass rush because it's still early in the season. It's the fourth quarter. Guys get exhausted. Guys don't have the same legs that they have early on in the game, and I'm sure they're mentally exhausted as well as they are physically exhausted. And he did exactly what a veteran quarterback should have done. And only one pass that he threw that was a little underthrown, but it was caught. Every other pass, was right there, and he just went right down the field, surgically dissecting the Eagle defense, which I actually kind of enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, sure, why not? Watching a guy.
I just wish it would have happened like at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, as opposed to
12:30.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, I was gonna say 10 to midnight.
Yeah.
I thinking about the NFC, and I understand that it's very early, and as you said many times, the first 4 weeks are now like the preseason, but. Some of the better teams in the NFC coming in had, really bad weeks this week. The San Francisco 49ers losing to the Minnesota Vikings, the Philadelphia Eagles losing last night in the way that they did, the Detroit Lions losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Dallas Cowboys getting their their teeth kicked in by the New Orleans Saints.
Which is amazing. It's amazing. It was a crazy week in the NFC.
Right, exactly, especially in the NFC with some of the better teams that we thought coming in. So I don't know how much you read into it, but, I mean, it feels after a couple of weeks that conference is wide open. I'm sure the 49ers will get it together, and Christian McCaffrey is going to be out for a number of weeks, but I'm sure they're still going to be the one to beat.
They put him on that, they put him on IR, which is going to be at minimum 4 weeks. Any sort of Achilles calf situation, they got to be really, really careful. And, they don't want that thing popping on him. And so they're going to make sure that he is 100%. We may not see him for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
We may not see him, maybe 8 games left in the season by the time he comes back because of that injury and how sensitive the entire sports world is when it comes to these Achilles situations. I remember, obviously, we had Danny Marino with the Achilles, Vinny Testaverde with the Achilles. I just feel like it's so more prevalent now. Again, it's like knee injuries, it's like arm injuries in baseball. These things are legitimate now, and they are worrisome to say the least. And everybody is just kid gloves when it comes to an injury like this.
Yeah, I mean, you saw 2 high-profile ones last year with Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. So, I mean, I think that's fresh in people's minds. And then we know the Kevin Durant, when he popped his Achilles in a very crucial moment in an NBA Finals. I mean, it's crazy to think about how many of those big high-profile Achilles injuries have been out there, and how much you've also seen like the calf be a part of that prior to the Achilles going. So this is another one of those situations. So they got to be very careful. Another big football news, and also in the NFC as well, is Bryce Young being benched by the Carolina Panthers and Andy Dalton getting that opportunity. Now, right off the bat, I heard the afternoon guys here and Sean Morash and Tiki and Evan and Tommy talking about it yesterday when I was in the car about how the Giants should reach out to the Carolina Panthers and try to make a deal to bring Bryce Young in here and pair him with Brian Daboll and see if Brian Daboll can get something out of him. I really don't think the Carolina Panthers are going to give up on him that quickly. 1 year after drafting him number 1 overall. It'll be interesting if they did. I mean, the 49ers gave up on Trey Lance very quickly, but they had Brock Purdy. The Carolina Panthers, they've got Andy Dalton, who's a veteran, but he's not going to be the future of the organization. I think they really would like Bryce Young to be good, so I don't think they're going to end up trading him. But I mean, it is a mess in Carolina. I mean, they stink. He looks terrible. Number 1 overall pick. I mean, not only does he look bad, it doesn't look like he belongs because he's so small. So that Dave Canales is not messing around, man. Take a seat, young man.
I'll say that, I can only speak from what I know and what I think I know. And
okay.
This goes back to last year when he was a rookie. So in week 3 last year, the Carolina Panthers sat him down because he got hurt in week 2. And Andy Dalton did take over, and they went out to Seattle. And, Frank was still the coach there. They called 58 pass plays, and Andy Dalton threw for like 368 yards.
Yeah.
And he wanted to play, well, I believe he wanted to play. I don't know this for a fact, but I do believe that he wanted to play Andy for a much more significant amount of time to give Bryce a chance to just calm down and just see it. And he was told not to. He was told he had to go back to Bryce. This is the kind of crap that, when ownership gets involved and people who are not coaching get involved, this is the kind of thing that happens. So Dave Canales probably recognized that the team has lost all belief in their quarterback and probably went into the owner's office and said, look, man, he's just not ready. The team doesn't believe in him. And if you want to continue to go down this road and you want to be, non-competitive and you want to continue to get your ass kicked, then I'll continue to play him. I'm assuming this is how this thing went. He goes, he's just not ready. We got to put Andy in there, let Andy settle everybody down, give Andy a chance to win some games here, and we'll bring Bryce back when we think he's ready. But there also may be something going on in that locker room that they know that they don't have a chance with Bryce Young. And once you start to lose the locker room about who's playing quarterback, you don't really have a chance to recover from that.
Yeah, so I guess it wasn't Frank Reich. I guess he wasn't the problem there in Carolina as they fired him mid-season.
Because, Frank took the job knowing the parameters of the job and other things that he had to be accepting of. And, these coaches, they want jobs. And that job opened up in a place where, his 3 daughters live. And I think one of his daughters actually works for the Panthers prior to him being hired there. So it worked out. From a family standpoint, it was great for him. And that's one of the reasons why he took the job. But the job was wrought with all sorts of different issues internally that, you don't know that until you get in there, and then you start seeing what's happening. And half the organization's pulling one way, the other half is pulling the other way, and then you got the owner who's, he's heading into Daniel Snyder territory in terms of being an unliked owner in the NFL. So you have a lot of different issues going on down there, and the best way to change things is to bench the quarterback that can't get the job done and put the other guy in there and at least give your first-round draft pick, your first overall draft pick, a chance just to sit on the sideline and just watch for a minute.
Yeah, I'm projecting way into the future and making a lot of assumptions, but this Bryce Young disaster could have a major impact on the New York Giants at the end of the year. Because,
in terms of the draft, because there'll be another team looking for a quarterback.
Right, that you would have never expected to in year 2 after drafting the guy number 1 overall. You would have been like, okay, they're not going to need a quarterback. They might.
Yeah, but I just don't see Deion Sanders letting Shedeur Sanders go to Carolina for that owner or going to the Giants. I see him.
Well, I mean, there's other
wanting
quarterbacks
him to go play for Antonio Pierce and the Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, but I'm not just talking about Shedeur. I mean, you've got Quinn Ewers.
Carson Beck.
Yeah, right. Down in Georgia. So, I mean, there's other quarterbacks.
There's going to be a ton of quarterbacks that we'll be talking about once we get closer to the draft, yes.
And there'll be another out-of-nowhere guy like there always is. And he'll just pop up, and then someone will fall in love with him, and he'll get drafted 6 overall and probably shouldn't, like Daniel Jones and Zach Wilson and J.J. McCarthy and all that stuff. Do they really have on Tankathon? I'm looking there, the Shedeur Sanders going to the Giants right now.
They have Shedeur Sanders going to the Giants right now. Yes. Yeah, but it's
I would sign for that immediately.
But these things
I know,
change constantly.
Of course they do. I mean, and it's crazy to think about. I'm just thinking how much fun that would be.
Right now, your top 3 quarterbacks, as we sit here right now, and in no particular order, by the way, is Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, and Quinn Ewers from Texas.
Yep.
So those 3 guys, Georgia, Colorado, and Texas, those 3 quarterbacks. And they'll probably most likely be top 5 players.
Yeah, I mean, that's generally what happens. Those guys get massively overrated, some of them, as it gets closer to the draft because teams know how important it is to get those guys in their rookie contracts to be able to build a great roster around them, and they want to take a risk.
That's exactly right. So, it will be interesting once we get to that point and once we start looking at all of that. But it's still way too early for that to happen. I don't know. Can the Giants? Can they turn something around that it doesn't feel like it. It feels like they are stuck going the other way again.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I didn't think the Mets had any shot of turning it around this year, and I had lots of reasons why, and they ended up doing it. So I know it's a completely different sport and a completely different organization, but I felt the same way. I was looking at the roster. I said, this is a year where it's a transition year. And they didn't really go into the off season trying to go crazy to get better. And they woke up and have had this amazing second half to the season. I mean, I don't see it with the Giants, especially with the schedule, but hell, we didn't think in 2022 that team was going to be any good, and they ended up going to the divisional round.
No, I know. So the interesting thing is that you got the Grimace back, you got the oh my God back, the OMG back, you got the Rally Pimp back. When are they bringing Huck Tua back?
Yeah, I mean, she's really gotten a bad rap here because no one is looking to see what her record has been, or the Mets' record has been after throwing out the first pitch. But I got a feeling she's not going to come back.
Yeah, too bad. But again, and I heard Jerry talking about this morning. I have no idea who the Nationals are. Like, you don't know any of these players.
Oh, yeah.
And yet the game is still 2-1.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? I was like, who are, like, I feel like they're playing with and I know they have young talent because they were talking about it last night. But I have no idea who anybody on the Nationals is.
Well, I mean, it's September baseball on a bad team, and they're throwing a bunch of young guys out there. It's classic.
And the Mets are just barely beating them.
Yeah, but I mean, how many times have we seen that? Back in 07 and 08, it was the Florida Marlins, the Miami Marlins at the time. They were a bad team, but they were young and they were hungry, and there were September call-ups, and they ended up beating them in these critical situations. Terrible. So it happens. But they won. It would have been a hell of a lot worse if they didn't win that one last night.